Hey there, my friends. So it's funny about me is that I always say, well, I'm not really buying any more decks for a minute, so I won't be doing any more video reviews. And then I end up getting a new deck, and several have come that I forgot about or wasn't expecting or were impulses. And that's just what it's like to live in my world because I do things like that. So I actually do have a couple more deck videos that will come out, but yeah, I'm also going to do some more watch me work videos because I've gotten some requests, and I enjoy doing those, and they're easy to make. So I'll be doing some more of those, and it just gives me a chance to work with all of the decks that I have, because I really rarely, well, not really, but I tend to sort of work with like a deck or two when I'm reading for clients, but anyway, what I thought I would share with you today is something new to me. Well, one thing that's new to me. So these are two decks, Carol Herzer decks. This is the original Illuminated, which I have shown on this channel before. This deck I have had for 20 years. It was the first indie deck I'd ever heard of. It was the first one I ever got. And I've shared it on this channel before. Some of my early videos were made using this deck. And by then I had probably had it for 10 years, maybe. I can't even remember how long I had been reading when I started this channel. But it's all very interesting to me. So anyway, so then over the years she has done different editions, Carol, of the deck, and there are several available now. Also, kind of the process she uses has changed. So, you know, there are evolutions. I never thought I would buy another of her decks because I don't work with the waite-smith specifically very much for obvious reasons, right? But like most readers, I have kind of a complicated love-hate relationship with it, and there are times where I don't know, you know, it's what I learned with. It was my first love for all, you know, for all its problems. You know, very much a product of its time and culture, and at the same time, you know, it's hard to deny that it did shape tarot, and it did shape divination. It's also funny to me when I pull it out and work with it how easy it is to work with, because I'm so familiar with it, you know what I mean? So, it's, you know, I don't know. I get so caught up in, like, what should I be using, and, you know, will folks get upset if I use this or not, and, you know, it's just a thing that is another thing about living in my brain, which I tend to do. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that recently I picked up a new deck of hers. Now, the deck itself I don't think is new, but I just picked it up. And by picked it up, I mean I ordered it. And I thought it was actually very similar in terms of the paintings. It's actually completely different paintings. So what Carol has done is sort of painted the waite-smith deck in different sort of vibrations and energies, and just very kind of vibrant and beautiful and exciting. And it kind of makes me forget all of the things, or many of the things, that I don't particularly like about the mass market editions of the waite-smith, which is that the coloring is really ugly. You know, I mean, that's kind of the fundamental thing of it. It's just usually been printed in a pretty ugly way. You know, I know that there's a lot of thinking about, like, the color palette, and that, you know, that's a choice, and it means something. Well, that's never meant anything to me. So what I thought I would do is take you through, or not really take you through, it's the waite-smith deck, but just compare these two editions so you could see the two. And, you know, just talk a little bit and show you the cards, and, you know, just share with you my experience, I guess, of working with these decks. So Carol makes these decks, and she makes these bags. So both of these are handmade by her. And the printing process that she uses and has always been unique and really interesting and really fascinating and durable. They used to she used to customize the decks, the bags, and I remember wanting something neutral, so she sort of picked this sort of faux suede, and then the back of the deck kind of matches that. She will let you sort of, or she will do edits for you if you want. This is the back of. I'm actually going to zoom in. This is the back of the new one, the one that I have now. And I have a friend. My friend Liz has this deck, and there's glitter underneath the lamination, which is so gorgeous, and I'm very envious of it. This does not have that. This does. Well, it doesn't have glitter, but it's always been hard to show on camera, and it's always been very subtle anyway. But what you can kind of see is that there's iridescent paint on these. I don't know if you can kind of see that. It's very subtle. Very, very beautiful. And so she would hand paint the image, the painting before it was laminated. I don't know if she still does that. But anyway, it's quite beautiful. And the paintings are quite similar, but they're also very different. I don't think I can get any more zoomed in on that. But it's because this is kind of the distance you'd be seeing them from anyway. So they're just stunning. And I've really always loved the paintings here that she's done. And just the richness of the color is so beautiful. So this was the original illuminated. Again, this is the Starlight illuminated. Different decks. Some of the colorations are very different. Some aren't. You'll see. This is a situation where the images were printed on paper and then laminated, and I'll shuffle both of these at the end. But again, this is a 20-year-old deck. It looks like it's never been used. It's been incredibly durable, and because of the fact that it's laminated in this sort of plastic, it's also waterproof. This is different, but it's similar. I don't know how to compare the two, except what I think is happening is that the laminate might be a little stiffer, or the paper that it's printed on might be a little stiffer, but they're very similar, very, very in feel. And that's really, you can see that this deck has a little bit more of a bowed bend to it, and that's not from shuffling exclusively, although part of it, I was so tempted to shuffle it just now, but I just spent all this time putting them back in order, so I could compare the two. This is different. This obviously doesn't have the same kind of bowing, and it's a little, this feels a little bit more like what you would get from a mass market. You can definitely tell that this is handmade, but they both shuffle pretty much the same, honestly. And I've always liked how we're working with this deck is, because I've never been super, super, concerned about damaging it, because it is sort of well protected. I think the things to know about these sort of more handmade decks is that, you can't modify them in the same way, but she will modify them for you. If you ask her, and of course there's a cost associated with that, you know what I mean? Having the chatoyant paint on this, I love that word, is the iridescent paint. It cost a little extra, not a whole lot. So again, I don't know if she's still doing that. I didn't see it on the website when I looked at this, but this deck is a little bit thicker, but not really by much. Maybe like 5 or 6 cards thicker. I don't know if I can show you. Can you see? It's like marginally thicker, but like not a lot. Yeah, like 5 or 6 cards thicker, but not hard to shuffle. Obviously they are glossy because this is a glossy laminate. I always have different standards for something that someone made in their apartment or their home rather than something that was sent out to a printer. So, I'm not mad at the glossiness here, and I'm not mad at anything about these. They're quite beautifully constructed and designed from just a production standpoint. So I'll start just walking through the cards as I talk. So let me move them together a little bit. So you can see that the Starlight illuminated has more of a nighttime kind of Van Gogh kind of feel, and this obviously has a little bit more of a daytime feel. But it's still the waite-smith. Obviously this is borderless. Obviously there's no titles. This obviously has a border. Again, I think that was customizable at the time too. I can't remember, but I wanted the titles. The titles in some of the cards you'll see are a little different, not much. But they're both beautiful. I was going to do an unboxing of this yesterday when it came, and I'm glad I didn't actually, because I felt like I needed to spend some time thinking about it. You know what I mean? I don't know why. Like I had a moment where when I originally saw it, I just felt like, oh. But then as I worked with it and I was playing around with it last night, I was like, oh, you know what I mean? And I don't know what the O was. I think I was just in a bad mood, honestly. You know, it's been a weird week, and my allergies are insane, and life is nuts. So, but and weirdly, like, I have always loved this deck, you know, for what it is as a waite-smith deck, right? I think I might like this one a little better, just because I'm very, very big on, like, dark, rich colors, you know what I mean? So this obviously has a little bit more of a dark richness to it. But when I lay them out for you later, you'll see how sort of vibrant and vibratory, you know, vibrational the paintings really are. And I'll lay out both for you. So I've never been, like, I never was like, oh, I need a borderless waite-smith, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care about, I do have one, the Radiant Wise, I think. But, again, I don't really work with the waite-smith deck all that much. I work with variations of it, but rarely the original drawings, right? But I would read with this for clients. I always sort of feel crappy when the deck isn't going to show everyone themselves, right? But I also think that this deck sometimes, like, people expect these images when they get a reading to a certain degree, so I don't know. That doesn't really make it better, but I worry about all this stuff all the time. I worry about what people will think of me. I worry about how people will feel. I'm just a worrywart. Again, so when I looked at this last night, I said, oh, it's the same paintings, sort of with star, but it's not the same paintings. Actually, they're completely different paintings. Of the cards, which is very, very cool. I love when people do things like this, and they just make things their own. It's also true that because this is the waite-smith deck, you really don't need titles on it because everyone knows these images. This star I sort of prefer more. Actually, partly just because of that iridescence in the water. Again, it's never going to show up. Oh, it's so hard. Even if you can see it, it doesn't look as good as it does in real life. It's one of those subtle things. But there's an energy, is the word I was reaching for when I was saying vibration. You know, there's a throbbing, sort of pulsating quality to it, and actually that's enhanced, I think, in this case by the borderless version. Although I've liked I've always liked the kind of poker size of these. So some of the differences between the two are very subtle, some are not, but again, they're just, I don't, you know, they're both beautiful. Now, in terms of the one here on my left, my older original one, she's not doing this kind of paper lamination printing anymore. This is sort of where she's gone. And I think it is better. I think in terms of what people will expect, I think because of the journey of sort of independent decks in the last 20 years, I think more people will feel like, oh, this is what I expect from a deck. This I've always loved, though. This, again, has just held up really well. It's really beautiful. Did I do the suits backwards? That's so weird. That is so unlike me. Here we go. So, I don't know what I was saying anymore. Oh, yeah, this, I never had any problem with this one on the left. Ever. So I didn't need a new version. But, you know, I think consumers, you know, will prefer this. It just feels a little more familiar. But both shuffle well. And the other thing I'll say about her deck is, like, these are two of my least favorite cards in any tarot. The 2 and 3 of Wands. because they really do sort of represent, empire, which is colonialism, right? But even in these images, I think Carol's paintings sort of make me less anxious about them. And actually, in this one, she's painted out the boats, so there's no kind of. So what you have is someone sort of standing on this precipice, but what they're looking at is the sky, rather than these boats sort of sailing off to do the things that are evil. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just like a subtle thing, but it's like, oh, nice. But again, like just the sky on both of these, and like that's the thing, and I think that was her intent. I think she sort of did these paintings in a sort of magical state, right? A magical state of mind, and to me, they you can feel it. You can feel them throbbing, and that's such a weird word, right? Thanks to erotic fiction, but no, I really mean that. Like, there's a vibration of just life force, that comes out of the painting and the images. And so I think, again, if you have to use a waite-smith deck, why not one that vibrates with such energy, right? Or, certainly also one that's made by an independent creator, who puts time and effort into the making of it. It's not, there may be some machining in the making of these, but they aren't machine made in the sense that we're familiar with. So again, like very subtle differences in hues, but just so stunning. I was surprised. Oh, so before I say what I was about to say, so the court cards in this illuminated edition, the page, queen, and king are given zodiac sign correspondences. So this is given Sagittarius. The knights are all given the element of their suit. So you don't see queen or page of wands here. You see Sagittarius. Obviously, this one doesn't have titles. So again, fire as the knight of wands. And then the queen of wands here in Leo. And then the king in Aries. So I don't know if those are common astrological correspondences, because I don't really work with astrological correspondences in tarot. Like, I know the emperor is in Aries, or is Aries, or represents Aries, and so there are those Aries qualities, but I don't really work with that much. So it's never really bugged me either. And so now we are in the suit of cups, and I should probably speed up just a little bit because we're already almost 20 minutes in. Yeah, I mean, I just think both, again, like I just don't have enough beautiful adjectives to talk about how much I like both of these, and I am impressed. I will say I'm impressed by this because it really does feel machined. You know what I mean? Like, and I guess in the sense that it's a little cleaner, but not so much. Again, like there was nothing wrong with this ever, and it may have allowed her to do certain things to the cards that maybe she can't do. Like, I don't know if she's still doing like the iridescent paintings, but. I don't. But again, like the whole point really is just that it was always. Am I one ahead? I will say that the borderless version does feel more immediate, in the way that, as people who like borderless, I don't have any problem with borderless cards. I just don't need every deck to be borderless. And in fact, there are some where I kind of either wish there were borders or quite like the borders. The new Bonefire is an example. I like the size. I like the cardstock a lot. I wish there were borders. So Cups, Pisces for the page, Water for the knight, Scorpio for the queen, Cancer for the king. And then we get into swords. This might be where the paintings really shine the most, especially if you're not a fan of the swords in the waite-smith, because, again, the energy, the vibration, the color and light to get a little Sondheimy on your asses. Like, this even makes me like the Three of Swords, because it completely recontextualizes it, you know? It's just a very thoughtful, cool, you know, work. This deck has a little bit more sharpness, and that may be the paintings, and it may just be the size. And she does offer most of her decks in multiple sizes, which is cool too. Because again, it's customizable, which I think is very, very cool. Like, even the 9 and 10, which are sort of the ones no one wants to see, I think just look so stunning. And for me, as a reader, like, why that is interesting is because one of the reasons why I don't work with waite-smith decks that much is because of the negative connotations that some cards have, like many of the Suit of Swords. Not so much that they don't mean negative things in the reading, but again, they may or may not. For me, it's less about that at this point, right? Because I'm a good enough reader at this point for that the image is only part of the equation. You know, I have the element, I have the suit, I've got the other card, you know, I've got a lot to guide me. Maybe there's a keyword now, you know, in some of my cards. So, but what it does when the image is more neutral or less scary looking is it allows the client to not experience an emotional reaction too quickly before I can explain what the cards contextually mean. And that was one of the reasons why I sort of went to the Marseille and Pip decks, because of that, you know what I mean? Now I'll use really anything. And one of the things that I encourage folks to do when they're learning is to learn to read any kind of deck, because it just opens up the possibilities. I think it opens up the potential for you to get information from a reading. You know, it just allows more potential. It's a more open experience as a reader, and you just get better readings. In my experience. Oops. This has always been one of my favorite, or maybe even my favorite card in the waite-smith deck, and I think they're both stunning as well. And so the final quartz. The Knight of Pentacles, weirdly, has always been my favorite knight, too. I've just always found him really handsome. And then the Queen and the King. So that is the comparison. And, oh my god, you just saw all the garbage that... It's not garbage, it's all stuff, but it's work stuff. Let me just shuffle this one first so you can get a sense of it, and I'll lay this one out. They don't bridge that well, but they riffle quite nicely. So yeah, like you can't, like if you got an edition with borders on them and like you wanted to trim the borders, that would, I think, be bad news, right? Because they're laminated and trimmed in such a way as to like reinforce the lamination. So like you don't want to fuck with the makeup too much. You know what I mean? But you don't need to. If you think you're going to, if you're curious and you think you're going to get, or you would prefer a borderless, then like buy one of her borderless decks, right? Because again, it's not mass market production, so you're going to get different results if you try to mod them. I once read that if you shuffle a tarot deck 7 times, you have gotten it into a fairly decent state of randomness, which I never remember to count. Actually, these days, I mostly just ask the person that I'm reading for to tell me when to stop shuffling. And that's how I do that. And I used to let people shuffle. I don't let anyone touch my cards anymore, mostly just because of germs. I mean, if you think about it, not even my health necessarily, but like when I'm reading at a market and there's, I'm reading for like 10 people in a row, it's it's a dicey situation, and I don't want to like disinfect my cards much. So this is the original illuminated laid out. Again, just really, you can see how beautifully, how beautifully it vibrates, and just the beautiful, beautiful energy of the paintings, and the skies are quite striking, and and this isn't. I mean, if I were going to read this, starting with the sun and the Knight of Cups, in this particular case labeled water, we've got some steam that we start with, right? And actually what we're doing is letting that steam motivate us to kind of get through. So we have the 10 and 9 of swords next to each other. So, we actually need to motivate our more sensational self through the more cerebral. It's almost like combining our water energy with our air, our emotions with our minds that sort of take us down to justice. And that, again, sort of ignites our ability to create change. In this deck, the Pope, or the Hierophant, is called the Initiate. But this is always a thing to me of am I dealing with, like, popishness, or am I dealing with faith? In this case, I think I'm dealing with faith, because the Six of Wands carries us to the Ten of Cups. So your faith in your cause will actually bring you to the emotional fruition and fulfillment that you want. When I read in columns, the Knight of Cups is complemented by two kind of problematic cards, or supported by them, Justice and the Initiate, or Justice and the Hierophant. But what this tells me is that, again, they have deep faith in their cause, and that will be another motivator for them. They have to be careful of getting burned out, but if they put the right amount of energy in, the Six of Wands, like if they put enough energy in that they're getting out what they're putting in, they can sustain it. But the Ten of Wands is going to suggest, a Ten of Swords rather, is going to suggest there's either going to be anxiety or a tendency to overthink things. And so really focusing on the task, the Six of Wands, is going to do that. Likewise, the final column, the Nine of Swords, again, suggests kind of a mental burnout, but the 8 says you got to keep pushing through, and you've got to, and then you will get to, the 10. So again, just a very quick example, but now I'll shuffle and lay out the other one for you. And again, it's the waite-smith deck, but just beautifully painted. Again, this one, though it isn't quite as bent, and again, it's not from shuffling, that's just sort of a natural piece of how that particular deck, behaves. This one also doesn't bridge as well as other decks do, but again, it riffles really nicely. I think that if you were to get larger sizes of this, it might be a little harder. Like, the size obviously matters in terms of how the cardstock behaves in a riffle. So if this were a larger deck, it might be harder to riffle shuffle, especially if you need to side shuffle. I think that this cardstock would be kind of hard to side shuffle, side riffle. I will say this too. So one of the cards had the laminate was peeling a little bit, just a tiny bit at the corner, and I wrote to Carol and I said, hey, I love this deck. Oh my God. I noticed the hangman was peeling a little bit. Can I buy a new hangman from you? And she said, actually, you don't need to. Just take a 250 iron, an iron at 250 degrees roughly, no hotter than that, and put a little piece of cloth or paper. I used paper on top of the corner, and then just iron it for a few seconds, and it will reactivate the adhesive. And it did. It worked perfectly. So, again, there's sort of a self-healing quality to the cards too. So if you experience something like that, it's not difficult to fix. I can get so caught in shuffling that I frequently forget that I'm making a video, so I will not do that. There's my guy. This always happens to me. You know what? People always ask me about my setup for making videos. Don't get an expensive camera and memory cards because they take up so much fucking memory. This video alone took up, the previous 20 minutes took up this entire 512 gigabyte memory card. Use your phone, honestly. It's much easier. Anyway, I don't know if you saw me lay them out, but here they are laid out. And again, quite gorgeous. And again, I think if I had to choose, I'd prefer this one, but they're both kind of amazing. So again, just really gorgeous handmade paintings and production, and it's so cool. And again, this makes me almost want to read with, for folks with the deck, because I think just they would find the energy so sort of luscious. But that's it. That's the Starlight Illuminated, and a revisit of the original Illuminated by Herzer. I hope this was fun and interesting for you. Take care, be good, and we'll talk soon.